Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto secretly dated Rhaenyra Targaryen? This is part 1. And if you want more, then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's getting the video, and do check out the author of the story. Blackwater Bay lived up to its name for once, on a surprisingly fresh summer morning of 129 AC. A slate-gray bank of clouds hung over King's Landing, lending the churning waters of the capital's principal port the look of tar as the sun struggled to punch through the gloom. The obscured solar disk lent out just enough light for a distinctly draconic shadow to trace silently across the stirring waves. For far above the waters at the mouth of the narrow sea flew a mighty beast, its scales quite xanthic while its triangular head, adorned with a plethora of dull spikes, leaned from side to side in a gesture that evoked a man rolling their shoulders in morning exercise after weeks of lethargy. But this was not a man. No, this great reptile was so much greater than the lesser races of Westeros. A descendant of long-doomed Valyria. It was the symbol all in the land knew to be the zenith of absolute, total, unshakable power. Her name was Syrax, and she was a dragon. Naturally, she was not without her rider. Rhaenyra Targaryen sighed atop Syrax's back, reveling in the torrent of fresh air blustering against her dragon rider's raiment, its scaled pauldrons a darker black compared to the coat's dull mauve. The princess of the Targaryen dynasty eased herself back into her saddle's warm, well-worn leather and pulled lightly on the reins to get Syrax to bank gently to the right, giant leather wings beating gently amidst the tussle of wind. The whispering dance of air currents took the pair over King's Landing in no time at all. The distant forms of the Red Keep and the Dragon Pit rendered to nothing but toys upon a game board by her great height. Riding her dragon had always given Rhaenyra a feeling of freedom that cleared her mind. Up here in the clouds, riding banished all her worries for a fleeting moment, and goodness, had there been some issues as of late. The crab feeder causing issues in the stepstones and her demon Targaryen's recent bouts of seemingly state-sanctioned brutality aside, the entirety of King's Landing was abuzz at the slowly approaching birth of what would become the princess's younger sibling. And the wait was slowly but surely killing the king and queen. Not in the literal sense, but rather the amount of stress that it was putting on their marriage. King Viserys had visibly aged perhaps a decade in these last 8 months since the Maesters and Septas had confirmed beyond all reasonable doubt that the queen was with child. And by the 7, was it grating on the young princess. 8 months of being forced to watch her father flit hither and thither like a moth dancing between candles in anticipation of the birth, and her mother, always so radiant, slowly dimming to a shadow of a former self, afraid of once again facing the worst fear of any parent. And father has already planned a tourney for next month. Rhaenyra breathed out through gritted teeth. Syrax gave a rumbling hiss in response, inclining her head to look back at her in curiosity. Violet eyes warmed at the dragon's concerns. She patted the xanthic drake on its flank and flashed a smile. "Not you, girl, just talking to myself," she assured the multiple-ton dragon. Syrax huffed indignantly before turning its head back to the sky ahead, prompting the silver-haired rider to grin. "Well, if you're going to be grumpy, I suppose we won't be taking the plunge." That instantly got the dragon's attention. "Aha. Still a thrill-seeker, aren't you? I'd a feeling you'd be gagging for it after the storm." A few days ago, on an otherwise serene summer's day, King's Landing residents had looked up into the blue afternoon sky only to see a torrent of roiling black clouds seemingly boiling from nowhere, and in scant hours, the capital was rocked by a cataclysmic freak storm. The clouds blocked out the sun, and for 3 days and 3 nights, the only light in the capital had been delivered by forking bolts of cerulean skyfire as booms of thunder shook the meager shacks of Flea Bottom to their splintered and rotting foundations. The winds had been so extreme that none of the dragon riders, bar a quite inebriated demon, had even considered attempting a flight amidst the lightning that would have made the most headstrong Baratheon sweat. And then last night, in the dead of night, while the small council schemed and solicited ideas and the faithful had offered their prayers to the old gods and the new, the storm had simply broken, bleeding away silently into the night. Already a borderline brigade of maesters had sent ravens from Aldtown to inform the king of a field expedition to King's Landing to document the aftermath of this miraculous event, begging for lodging, less than half of them wanting to be put up near the pleasure district. The faith chalked the event, quickly gaining the name, the Furious 3, as evidence of divinity, the incredible power of the heavens breaking into the mortal world to grace them and herald the arrival of the royal birth. Rhaenyra, on the other hand, had simply thought that it had been a bloody big storm that had prevented her and Syrax from flying, something she had rectified the moment dawn broke. Urging Syrax to fly straight, she gave her partner a series of subtle adjustments with her legs and the reins to slowly but surely come to a complete standstill in the air, held aloft by a tremendous banding thermal updraft that only a skilled dragon rider could perceive. Tension and excitement built in the female dragon as it hung there, its yellow scales clicking together noisily as its neck tensed. She could feel the thermal beginning to decay beneath them. Once it had degraded beyond a specific point, gravity would win out, and the duo would simply drop out of the sky. Yet Syrax remained as still as she could, waiting with rapt anticipation until her partner gave her the order they both wanted to attend. The sound of wind bled away until all either heard was the sound of one another's breathing, hearts beating as one. The sun broke through the cloud bank, bathing the duo in the light of the long summer, and Rhaenyra dug her heels into her mount's flanks with a grin. "Now, girl," she called, throwing herself flat against the saddle and holding on for dear life. Syrax raised her long neck back and answered with a pleased roar before letting her body slope forwards and began to plummet for the black water many thousands of feet below. The sound of wind filled the young woman's ears as she looked ahead, thankful that the crest atop her mount's head so perfectly created a shield against the worst of the wind, allowing her to look straight down at the glassy black water they were currently plummeting toward. They were an arrow loosed from the greatest bow, the drake's wings pulled in for more. Outstanding aerodynamics were their fletchings and her sprawling silver hair a whoop of exhilarated will that spurred them on towards the earth. Your average dragon could maintain a maximum speed of about 125 miles per hour on the straight and flat, but Syrax was built for speed. Her svelte body and swan-like neck cutting through the air with a sharp whistle until they were falling at a hair's breadth under 300 miles per hour. Leaving it to the last possible second, Rhaenyra waited until she could make out the glimmer of their reflection on the water below before yanking back on the reins as hard as she could. Leathery wings sprang out like coiled vipers on either side of her, and the tremendous organic canvas took the strain, a beat of the tail providing just enough shift in inertia to let Syrax pull up in a graceful arc. Her rider gritted her teeth as she felt the edges of her vision start to gray and made an effort to push her thighs inward, the unique grooves built into the seat pinching her legs in such a way as to prevent her blood from flowing into her feet. Syrax pulled up from her dive, and Rhaenyra felt her body experience a brief pressure before it eased, and she could relax into the back of her saddle, her grimace lightening to a smile. The yellow dragon streaked across the coast not 10 meters above the surface of the water, kicking up a spray of water in her wake from the displaced air. "Not bad, Syrax, not bad at all," the Targaryen commended her mount, patting the dragon's neck, who growled appreciatively. The both of them had a need for speed, and while the maneuver was taxing on the body, it meant that for a few miles at least before their gathered speed ablated away to wind resistance, the duo were quite literally the fastest things on the planet. Soaring through the air so close to the water, Syrax banked lightly, allowing one of her wingtips to dip into the water, kicking up a sheet of water that refracted the light of the sun through its spray in prismatic fashion. The dragon seemed enjoyed the simple act, flying with such intense velocity that she would not have to worry about beating her wings for at least another 2 miles. While her dragon was having her moment of catharsis after days spent underground to wait out the storm, Rhaenyra busied herself looking along the coastline and surveying all the detritus that had been kicked up or washed ashore by the violent weather. She spotted much muck and silt that had coated the rocks and a few unfortunate fishing boats and merchant ships that had been smashed against the rocks like toys in a bath. Looking closer, she could already see the stick-like figures of men making their way down the rocks to salvage what they could. Little did she know they were the handsmen who had been dispatched from King's Landing the moment the storm had broken to start assessing the damages and seeing what could be salvaged. Doubtless, some contraband loot would soon make its way into the crown's coffers. Otto Hightower was nothing if not expedient, but for now she knew not of such things. Her flight continued uninterrupted for the next 20 minutes until her eye caught a glint of something metallic along the shore. Rhaenyra blinked and leaning forward, saw that it persisted. Curious, she banked her dragon in a slow winding circle over the coastline to get a better look until she was able to make out just what it was. A body sprawled across the beach amongst a heap of seaweed. Syrax came in to land with a light thump before Rhaenyra dismounted and jogged towards the figure. The pungent stench of brine and seaweed permeated her sense of smell, leaving her unsure if what she had come across was a shipwrecked survivor or just carrion tossed up by the storm. Rhaenyra wasn't quite sure. In truth, she wouldn't have seen him at all if it weren't for his clothes, for they were so garishly bright that only being covered entirely by seaweed would have hidden him from her eyes. Bending over and wrinkling her nose at the smell, the young princess began the simple, if unpleasant, task of peeling back the layers of seaweed to reveal the figure that lay beneath. Many would think that a princess would be repulsed by the very notion of potentially unwrapping a corpse, but there was a level of excitement as she worked at this current mystery that had presented itself to her. Life in King's Landing had grown so terribly dull as of late, and a distraction was most welcome. Strand by strand she pulled away and tossed aside, revealing what surprised her to be a young man near of an age with her, perhaps just shy of or recently past his 17th name day. He was of average height with hair so blonde he could have been a Lannister, but it was arranged in a ticket of spikes so thick she had never seen the like. His complexion was a peach tan that spoke of someone who spent much time outside but not ruddy and worn like a sailor. If so, it begged the question of what he was doing washed up on the shore like a common bilge rat. Thoughts of rodents brought her attention to the odd whisker marks adhered to his cheeks like tattoos. From the free cities? The sea snake once said that the people of Volantis marked their slaves' faces with tattoos. She mused curiously, pressing her fingers to his neck and felt a steady pulse. Well, he was alive if nothing else. Luck, it seemed, was on his side. Leaning back she took another look at him as a whole and felt her mouth crease in a thoughtful frown. He certainly wasn't dressed as a slave, clad in orange and black clothes he was, a strange amalgamation of torn rags. The vividness of that orange struck her as something too rich for any slave, save one who might work for the pleasure of their master, or mistress. She quashed that ugly of thought as soon as it came, turning her attention to the object that had caught the light in the first place. He clutched a strange metal plate of some sort in one hand. She couldn't be sure what it was, only that it had seen better days. Dings and scratches pitted its burnished steel surface with traces of black fabric having frayed to near nothingness at its ends. Any attempts to pry it free and get a good look at it were rendered moot when he jolted upright. 5 firm fingers locked around her wrist, and yanked, hard enough to bruise. Rhaenyra let out an exclamation of discomfort but found focused instead on the blonde whose eyes flitted in all directions, pupils dilated and unsure before locking onto her. His eyes were a bright blue, a shade of blue that looked to be carved from liquid gemstone. The blonde opened his mouth to speak only for a terrible gurgling sound to emerge deep from within his chest. His eyes bugged in their sockets before doubling over and starting to hack desperately against the sand as Rhaenyra watched on in worry, foam begging to build at the blonde's mouth. For a moment she found herself paralyzed by choice. This was such an alien situation to her that for a few seconds, all she could do was watch as the blood vessels in those sea blue eyes began to grow red. It was such a banal observation, the fact that she did not like to see the whites of his eyes so red, yet it was enough impetus to make her act. Shush, shush, she encouraged. You're all right. Here. Her palm thumped into the center of his back between his shoulder blades. The shock was just enough to make him void his lungs. Ack. The blonde turned and coughed up a frankly grotesque amount of seawater onto the sands. He panted for a few seconds more, foam at the edges of his lips as color returned to his face before finally speaking in a hoarse voice. Don't feel all right. His was a simple proclamation but it served its purpose. It sparked a pang of sympathy in Rhaenyra that she usually reserved only for her close-knit group of family and personal confidants. She wasn't much used to dealing with strangers, but the sight of him stirred some small semblance of pity in her. She stroked the small of his back once more as he heaved into the sands. Are you all right? She finally asked after his shoulders had ceased heaving. Pursing his lips, a pair cracked from the sun and caked in a fine layer of crystalline salt, the blonde sat back on his haunches, running the back of his hand over his mouth. Gonna be real, I feel like death. Despite the sincerity in his words at his self-assessment, the princess couldn't help but pick out the nascent dregs of wry amusement buried in his voice. She could either be direct and no nonsense in her response as her station expected, or she could show a modicum of mercy for a half-drowned man. You're in luck that I'm not the stranger then, friend, for I doubt my visage could pass for a skull. She jested grimly, picking the latter. The blonde looked at her as though she had grown a second head before a decidedly wet chuckle ripped from his throat, triggering another fit. Well, he coughed, you're a stranger to me, but you're no Shinigami, I'll give ya that. I get the feeling it's a similar thing. He asked rhetorically, pushing his sodden hair back on his head. Curiosity bloomed anew in her mind. Shinigami? There was a term she had never heard of, but if this blonde truly did not know of the Light of the Seven, then he must have come from very far indeed. She snorted in a way that her septa would have cuffed her around the ear for. Then from one stranger to another. May I have your name? Naruto? Naruto Uzumaki. The now named Naruto introduced with a lazy wave. A sharp juxtaposition from the drowned rat he had been shortly before. Quirking a silver eyebrow in interest at the name, Rhaenyra extended her hand, palm facing down in the traditional gesture of offering a hand to be kissed. A common gesture from royalty to a stranger. She mused idly about his name. It sounded similar to tales that the sea snake had once told her of distant Yi. Perhaps that was where he hailed from. I am Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen, daughter of King Viserys Targaryen. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Naruto stared at the offered hand before raising his own and bumping his fist against Rhaenyra's, causing her violet eyes to widen in confusion before amused interest bled in. Perhaps this was the standard greeting in Yi. Nice to meet ya, princess. If it's not much trouble, could you do me a favor? He began, tucking the metal plate away quickly in what remained of his jacket. Where the hell am I? Hell, singular, another odd twist. About 40 miles northeast of King's Landing. Surely you've heard of King's Landing all the way off in Yi. She posited, drawing an utterly stupefied look from Naruto. Where the proverbial heck is Yi? Or King's Landing for that matter? The blonde tilted with a bead of sweat racing down the back of his head, but soon enough a growl from behind Rhaenyra drew his attention and banished his current train of thoughts to the wind. As did something else. He looked past her. That frown became a curious smile as his eyes locked onto the large form of Syrax, even now watching the pair curiously as she enjoyed basking in the sun. Rhaenyra watched him in turn. How odd. He acted like he'd never seen a dragon before. Perhaps he'd hit his head harder than she thought. Naruto leapt to his feet with a speed no man should have possessed. Let alone one Rhaenyra thought recently shipwrecked. What is that? He asked, eyes gleaming with an excitement that his still hoarse voice couldn't convey. I beg your pardon? Rhaenyra felt her right temple begin to twitch. He must have been having her on at this point. He had to be. Have you been living under a rock before that storm tossed you onto the beach? There's no one from the north to Ulthos that doesn't know a dragon by sight. She said, annoyance mixing with pride. Syrax trilled questioningly at the young man who looked between the rider and dragon. Shooting the princess an askance look, Naruto asked, that's a dragon? He stroked his chin in thought, eyes crinkling and cheeks dimpling till his face looked like a puzzled fox. It was a surprisingly childish face and the princess found she quite liked it. Doesn't look like any dragon I've ever seen. Oh really, and here I was starting to think you'd bumped your… This thing has wings and no mustache. Naruto concluded, thumping his fist into his palm before smiling cheesily. But to be honest, this thing looks cooler than anything a shinobi ever conjured up and called a dragon. Mind if I go say hello? He did not wait for her reply, instead jogging towards the xanthic dragon while Rhaenyra was left sputtering in the sand. His words had succeeded in utterly throwing her for a loop. Hey, there. Naruto approached it with raised hand. Syrax didn't take kindly to that. She reared back from him, a stranger to her, with a startled noise. Snapping back to reality, Rhaenyra attempted to call out a warning to Naruto, dreading what was about to transpire. Syrax, no, ha. Naruto cocked his head to one side in confusion at her exclamation before looking back at the dragon. He found himself staring into an open-fanged maw with a quickly building orange glow emanating from its gullet. Oh, he quipped glibly, an exasperated sigh on his lips. The young man found consumed in a haze of molten death not a heartbeat later. A jet of concentrated orange fire sprayed over his entire body in the time it took Rhaenyra to open her mouth and give the counter-command to avert a very stupid way to die. And then, quite suddenly, things took a turn for the bizarre. From the heart of the fire, which should have been little more than kindling in the shape of a man, came the distinct sound of someone tutting in annoyance. A shape blurred from the flame, sending out a gust of wind that blew through Syrax's dragonfire, all but snuffing it out. Rhaenyra stood, transfixed at the figure that now stood at the center of a heath of blackened glassy sand. Naruto stood unbothered by the heat, a hand extended in a chopping motion. He was still aflame, but it was not Syrax's vermilion tongues with which he burned. His very body burned like a golden flame. Oi! Slitted red eyes glowered at her friend. That wasn't very nice. Syrax hissed, reared back for another blast. Naruto snarled, and something snarled with him. The golden flame surged around him, emerging from him in a plume of flickering light that bloomed around his body, quickly twisting and shifting until it was the unmistakable shape of a fox's head. The beastly specter let out a roar that thundered out over the bay, far louder than Syrax's challenging growls, so intense that even in distant Tarth, fishermen looked up from their work to gaze across the sea. Syrax coiled in on herself and made to rise to the challenge before the magnitude of the situation hit home for her. For the first time since her precious partner had hatched, Syrax hesitated. Then, in a show of deference that the princess had never seen shown to a non-Targaryen, Syrax bowed her head. The demonic fox skull persisted for a few more seconds before being sucked back into Naruto's still incandescent body. Having said his piece, he approaching the dragon and gently ran a hand over Syrax's nose. Rhaenyra stood aghast. Was this magic? She had thought the likes had died with old Valyria, yet here stood a being wreathed in fire, petting a dragon as if it were a common housecat. She flinched when Naruto looked over his shoulder, slitted red eyes a far cry from the blue depths she had seen when he'd woken. Don't be afraid. He smiled at her. I'm not trying to start any trouble. Afraid? Her? Nonsense. The blood of the dragon flowed through her veins. But that begged the question. What flowed through his? In this form he was fire incarnate. He could not be burned. She'd seen it with her own eye, and something quickened in her chest, a strange feeling she'd never felt before. Excitement tinged with trepidation. A word came to mind, one last tale the old sea snake had told her of distant Yi. Today was a day of 5 firsts for Naruto. First, he'd met a very strange girl and her dragon. Second, he'd been granted the exceedingly rare privilege to ride said dragon. Third, he immediately realized he loved dragon riding, and she'd ruined horses for him. There was something to be said about flying on dragonback, cramped though it was. Although sturdy enough, Rhaenyra's saddle only held enough room for one, and embarrassing as it was to grab onto a girl he barely knew, he didn't have much choice in the matter without falling off. Still, it was worth the sacrifice. The wind in his hair, the clouds rushing by, clinging onto Rhaenyra for dear life, her laughter rising in his ears as Syrax winged away. There was nothing quite like it. He could fly under his own power these days, to be sure, but that wasn't something he was keen on revealing just yet. Besides, his new friend, was she a friend? Seemed quite keen on showing off to him. That was all well and good, but unfortunately her eagerness to impress him led into the 4th and 5th revelations of the day. 4th, you see, because evidently this world had other dragons. A great many dragons, and a dragon pit to house them. 5th, came the realization that he really was far from home, with seemingly no way back. So yes. A day of 5 firsts, 5 surprises as it were. Surely he'd seen the last of them. How little he knew. The Red Keep always awed Rhaenyra. No matter how many times she laid eye upon its terrible towers, the princess always felt something stir in her chest when she stood in their shadows. The keep wasn't simply grand, proud, or even imposing. To her, it went well beyond that. It was a message, a statement, testament to all the Targaryens had been and all they ever would be. Aegon the Conqueror's work endured to this day. Gleaming red masonry shining in the sunlight for all to see, a constant reminder that the House of the Dragon stood as tall and proud today as it had upon its first day. Naruto whistled beside her as he stepped out the carriage. People live in that? His awe pleased Rhaenyra to no end. Impressed, was he? Good, he should be, of course they do. Come, she took him by the wrist and tugged him along by the hand. I'd like you to meet. Who? He made no effort to resist, eyes still fixed on the looming edifice above, either ignorant or uncaring of the Kingsguard that fell into step behind them. Likely the latter. After all, if he did not balk in the face of dragonfire, Then why would he fear mortal blades? You'll see. Rhaenyra grinned back at him as led him up the steps to the keep. Frowned now, as the faint scent of the sea caught her nose. She sniffed a little. Perhaps we can find someone to give you a bath after that. Naruto grunted his agreement. Wouldn't say no to a meal, either. Then you shall have it. She preened. But first, to business. I'm taking you to see my father. The whiskered warrior made an amused noise for reasons she couldn't quite understand, but made no effort to pull away. Up winding staircases Rhaenyra led her guest. Past the servants' quarters. Away from prying eyes, curious nobles and higher into the keep. She passed mother's room and briefly considering checking in on her, but no, she had been sleeping so peacefully just this morning. She needed her rest. Later, perhaps. Alicent was likely with her father, and she knew precisely where to find Otto Hightower at this time of day. Oh, but she'd not warned Naruto of what he was about to face. Perhaps she should do that. Be warned, when we enter the small council chamber, you should be prepared for resistance. She made brisk introductions, naming those he was likely to meet and the disagreement he was like to encounter. Sure enough, Rhaenyra heard raised voices as they reached the Tower of the Hand, or more aptly, the door leading within. Raised voices within, some most familiar. Overreach yourself, demon. Had you lost your mind, demon? Had her uncle returned? Naruto made to enter. Rhaenyra shushed him and dragged him back, pressing one ear to the door. On the contrary, I found it. Sure enough, her uncle's voice came through, muffled yet distinct nonetheless. I see you for what you are, a vulture who perches atop my brother's throne. Speak not to me of my wife, when you refuse to take another. She heard a chair slam back. Enough. Father's voice rang out. I will hear no more of this. Lord Corlys, you wished to speak of the stepstones. There, they were distracted. That was her cue. She pushed the door open and entered apace. Mercifully, most of the small council wasn't in attendance today. She caught sight of Otto Hightower first, and didn't her lip just curl at the sight of him? But there behind him, standing dutifully at attention, her nearest and dearest friend. Tired perhaps, but she seemed much recovered from her cold. Alicent quirked a demure brow her way, made quietly curious at Naruto's presence, but made no move to speak, yet. Nevertheless, she could see the questions smoldering away behind her eyes and made a quick gesture as she passed her by, promising to explain later. Well. Lord Corlys rumbled. What has the princess brought us today? An enigma. He huffed, skirting the Lord of Driftmark. Her attention was already well past him. And there seated beside father like a watchful hawk, Demon smirked back at her. He too took note of Naruto, tilting his head slightly now to regard him. The blonde met his stare evenly and tugged his arm free to frown at him, freeing her to reach father. Rhaenyra. You're late. The king chided her gently as she circled the table. The king's cupbearer must not be late. A rueful smile tugged at his bearded face as she darted in to kiss his cheek. Leaves people wanting for cups. Only then did Viserys look up from the table, only then did he notice Naruto, still locked in a staring match with Demon. And who is this you've brought into our home? Here it was. The moment of truth. Naruto tore his gaze away from Demon and fidgeted behind her, realizing he'd been put on the spot. Hey, that's a bit of a long story. I'm guessing you're her old man? Viserys coughed in surprise. Ha, Demon guffawed openly. You're a blunt one. Perhaps that's why my dear niece favors you so? Favor? Perhaps she did. Rhaenyra tried not to smile. She truly did. She failed spectacularly. Why have you brought this boy here? Leave it to Otto Hightower to ruin it. Naruto rounded on him. My name's not boy. It's Naruto. Naruto, then. The hand of the king acquiesced, but still he didn't relent. Why are you here? Rhaenyra told them in no uncertain terms. Of finding him washed ashore, of rousing him, and the miracle that had followed. Of watching him walk out of the fire and touch Syrax without being rent limb from limb. Of her dearest partner allowing him to ride with her. It was a story she expected few to believe, yet felt compelled to tell nonetheless. For once none interrupted her and she took full advantage, hammering every bit of her story home before someone could think to pipe up. Fascinating. Viserys found his voice first come the end of her tale, if it is true. Otto put in. Lord Corlys rumbled his agreement. It does beggar belief. Rhaenyra felt her hands ball into fists at her sides. I'm not lying. Then you are mistaken. The hand of the king scoffed. The boy cannot stand up to a dragon. What the princess saw was likely a trick of the light. Oh. Said boy quirked a brow and spread his arms wide. For having the name Hightower you have an awfully low opinion of me. Would you care for another demonstration? Alicent bit her lip to hide a silent smile. Viserys frowned in return. That will not be necessary. Why not, brother? Demon rose from his chair, curiosity piqued. It would be entertaining if nothing else. And if he's lying, we'll know soon enough. What? No, that wasn't her intent. Rhaenyra rounded on him, panicking, bleeding in her brain, hammering in her heart. Uncle, that is just fine. Naruto's smile had never wavered, not once, but now it had an edge to match Demon's challenge. I'm a bit curious about dragons myself. I wonder what yours looks like. Demon stepped forward to meet his gaze. You would not be so eager to meet Caraxes if you knew him. Naruto tilted his head a fraction of an inch. I've seen worse. Much worse. It was like watching two alpha predators square up to one another. Rhaenyra couldn't look away. She found herself spellbound by the sight. Neither would yield. Their pride wouldn't allow it. Somehow she knew what followed this instant, that this moment would define them in the years to come. They would either be the fastest of friends, or the fiercest of foes. There could be no middle ground. The world held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Viserys blew out sigh, and faltered, so be it. The dragon pit seemed darker somehow. Rhaenyra couldn't rightly say why. She'd landed here on Syrax only a short while ago and everything had seemed so much brighter than it was now. Perhaps it was the weather. The clouds had swept in to obscure the sun, casting gloomy shadows about the pit, lending the world an almost ominous eerie air. Even the dragon keepers, famed for their courage, seemed ill at ease. They had assembled here quietly, the 9 of them. Otto and Alicent, Lord Corlys of course, herself and her father alongside Demon and 2 of the Kingsguard. And of course, one mustn't forget Naruto. He almost seemed to vibrate before her eyes, trembling with excitement as he bounded from one foot to the other. She couldn't blame him. Dragons were fascinating creatures and he was so terribly curious about the lot of them. Could he sense the lives lingering within, the great worms hiding deep inside the pit? Syrax was slumbering somewhere within. She could sense her partner through their shared bond, but they weren't here for her. Father sighed and gestured to Demon. On with it, then. Let's have the truth. Her uncle strode to the entrance, sauntered, really raised both hands, and cupped them before his mouth. A deep breath followed and then, Caraxes, the shout echoed into the dragponnet, and a low shuddering, sibilant shriek answered almost immediately. A massive shadow emerged from the pit, its slender body arching like a snake as it dragged itself up and out of the pit. Rhaenyra found herself stepping back despite herself. She did not fear Demon's dragon per se. She was simply wary of it. And rightly so. There were foul rumors of the blood Wyrm. He had seen many a battle and slain many a would-be dragon rider before her uncle claimed him. Caraxes unfurled slowly, long neck arching toward Naruto. Hello, there. By contrast, the blonde stood his ground. The oaf even dared to wave. You're a bit grouchy today, huh? Sorry they woke you up. This won't take long. The blood Wyrm hissed at him and he huffed, planting a fist on his hip. Hey, don't take your anger out on me. I didn't ask for this. Demon balked. You can understand him? More or less. Naruto waved a hand. I can sense emotions, feelings, ya know? He's sleepy and not too happy about being woke up. When everyone continued to balk at him, he only smiled. Well, what are we waiting for? Roast me alive already. I want to get this over with and get something to eat, Father sighed. He certainly doesn't lack for spirit. Demon flicked glance her away as though to ask for permission, and when she didn't object. Dracarys. Caraxes reared back. Naruto planted his feet and grinned as the dragon's jaws parted. He was still grinning when a roiling red inferno washed over his boy. Bathed in fire from head to toe, he didn't make a sound. Rhaenyra felt her heart twitch. Had she sent him to his death? Syrax was one thing, but Caraxes was far older, his fire hotter and far fouler of temper. He proved that much now. Far from content with a singular blast, the Crimson Dragon unleashed a second, and then a third, followed by a fourth, all but charring the ground to black glass. Contrary to what some might believe, dragons could not continuously breathe fire. They had to pause, inhale, exhale, breathe, as all living creatures did. In that moment between exhalations, Naruto emerged. He walked out of the blaze, bathed in that strange golden shroud once more. His eyes were red yet again, slitted like those of a dragon. She could see the strange black marks etched against the gold, strange runic-like inscriptions she could possibly hope to understand. Clad in that cloak of gold, the whiskered warrior walked right up to Caraxes. Well? She couldn't properly see his face from here, but it sounded like he was smiling. Are you not entertained? There he was hamming it up, throwing Demon's words back in his face. Caraxes lumbered forward, intent to take a hearty bite out of him. No. Those wild red eyes narrowed upon the dragon. Sit. The dragon snapped at him instead. I said, sit. A wave of unseen pressure ripped through the arena, blasting everyone's hair back. Rhaenyra felt it all the same, and it terrified her, more so Alicent, who ducked behind her. She didn't blame her precious friend. This was akin to having a knife at one's throat, of staring down a furious beast ready to swallow you whole. Death. This was death. She nearly fell to her knees and hugged her shoulders. It was only an ironclad sense of self-control that kept her rooted. Father and Lord Corlys staggered back. Otto Hightower looked as though he'd just seen a ghost. Demon shivered, one hand flying to the hilt of his sword, yet held firm. It must have been even worse for poor Caraxes. For Demon's dragon physically convulsed, shuddered once, and laid its long neck upon the ground. Had the beast whimpered just now? No, surely not. Good boy. Naruto ran a hand across Caraxes' crest. Shish, shish. He cooed at it. It's all right, I know you didn't mean anything by it. You're just grumpy. Go on, you can sleep now. Sleep. In a matter of moments, the blood Wyrm did just that, dozing peacefully. Naruto turned a winning smile on them all. And he said it again. Are you not entertained? Rhaenyra certainly was. She broke the tableau first and walked his way, leaving a terrified Alicent no choice but to follow in her wake. Come, she took his hand and tugged him along. Let's get you a proper meal. You must be starving. Naruto laughed. Well, I won't say no to that. Don't suppose you've got any ramen? Alicent made a face. What, pray tell, is this? Ramen, you speak of? Naruto made a strangled noise. You gotta be kidding me. Rhaenyra laughed. Was this selfish of her? Undoubtedly. It most certainly was. Did she care what others thought of them? Not a jot. It was the beginning of something new. The dragon hungered. It was an ancient hunger, gnawing at their old bones, a constant relentless urge to destroy and feast and consume. But such meals were scarce. These days it had to content itself with scraps. How it hated scraps. The old Wyrm remembered days when it never went without, before the dark times, before the earth cracked and death spewed forth. Oh, yes. It remembered the day of doom, the moment of fire and blood. When a city died, men burned in their homes and dragons fell from the sky. It recalled the anger, the pain, the outrage, spreading its great wings, shaking off the ashes to flying away. Far, far away until it found safety in this strange land across the sea. It had been hungry ever since. It had grown larger ever since. The dragon had found a dead whale 3 days ago, seized it from the sea with its claws and carried it to shore. That made for a fine feast. Such bounty from the sea was rare these days, but even they did not sat it for long. So long now. Long had it lived, long had it lingered, long had it languished, even as its kin grew old and withered away or fought and killed one another, but not it. The dragon was different. With old age came strength and strength, power. Though its body grew, so too did its resolve to live. It clung to life tenaciously out of spite if nothing else. It would die in glorious battle or not at all. Such was the fate it craved. Such was the reason it had grown from a weak fledgling into the behemoth now feared far and wide. Yet what was the point of power when it had nothing to test itself against? What use was fire and claw and wing when no true opponent presented itself? For a long while now, it cared only to sleep and hunt. Such was its fate, discontent though it was, until it heard the roar. Distant and strong, ancient and powerful, the old Wyrm first heard the call across the sea. A cry that shook the very world. How its blood boiled that day. A single word had bleated through its ancient mind. Challenger. At last, after so long, Such a mighty racket made it feel young again. It had not faced a proper foe since the dark times. Not since the passing of its kith and kin in the old city. It knew where the roar came from. Far across the horizon, to the south of its great lair. But when it raised mighty wings to cry out in return, no response was given. It had not heard, it had not felt the call. A second time, nor was there a third. And so it was made curious. What manner of beast could make such a noise? Another dragon. No, this did not sound like a dragon. Perhaps it would leave its lair soon, seek out the sound and battle it. The thought pleased the old Wyrm. It had gone by many names since its birth, but it cared not for them. Why should it? It was fire. It was blood. It was death. Nothing else mattered. Names were for humans. This was its domain, its island, its kingdom. Any who came would be torn asunder as would the owner of the mysterious roar when they finally met. But first there would be battle. They would fight. The thought stoked the fire within. Yes, their battle would be legendary, but not this day. It was not yet time. And so the dragon waited for the day of release. Waited while gnawing on whalebones, with its infernal hunger. So very hungry. Eventually, hunger gave way to sleep, as it did. The dragon enjoyed its dreams. They were a reprieve from its hunger. Eventually, hunger gave way to sleep, as it did. The dragon enjoyed its dreams. They were a reprieve from its hunger. Tonight, when it slept, the dragon once more dreamed dreams of a man carved from golden fire. It longed for a day when it could devour him. Naruto rocked back on his heels, considering the monarch before him with wide, wary eyes. You want me to stay? He balked a little at the request. Here, in the Red Keep? I would, yes. Viserys granted him a nod. Is that a problem? King Viserys of House Targaryen, first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhaenyra and the First Men. Lord the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm. It really was quite the title. And that was quite the throne Rhaenyra's father was sitting on, as was the blade he leaned upon. So many swords. Blades sprawling down the very steps themselves like some kind of ad-metal carpet. He couldn't hope to count them all. He tried and lost track after 100. In a way, wasn't a king some kind of Hokage? Except you had 7 lands to look after instead of 1? That was an awful lot of responsibility. So many lives to look after. He couldn't fathom it. All these politics, all these laws and vows and oaths to keep. Just thinking of it left his head spinning. Made him feel downright boorish stand here wearing these rags. And yet the man sitting the throne only smiled kindly down upon him. Well, what say you? No, it's not a problem. A wry smile touched the corner of his mouth. Actually, I wanted to help you. Viserys reared back, a brief flicker of confusion flashing across his face. You wish to help me? In what way? There it was. The faint bite of disbelief in his voice. Naruto bit his lips to hide a smile. Did so enjoy being underestimated. From what Rhaenyra told me, he took a step forward, climbing the stairs leading to the throne, footsteps echoing in the empty halls. You're the one holding the realm together, Viserys. I think that's admirable. No, it is admirable. He chuckled wistfully, recalling another leader he'd once known, the third, older perhaps, but one who had led until his death. You remind me of an old friend. He crested another step. I'd like to see you smile more before you work yourself to death. Nearly there, now. After all, the hardest thing any leader can be is a good man. Now he stood before Viserys, towering over him. The king didn't flinch. He looked up at him, fingers idly curling round the hilt of his sword. Blackfire, Rhaenyra had called it. The sword of the king. Its steel sang in the low light as Viserys chuckled. Wise words for one so young. Oi, he scoffed. Cut that out, I know you're only 39. Perhaps, Viserys allowed with a low laugh, but the weight of the crown often makes me feel twice that age. It certainly seemed such. Even with his back bowed, the weary king sat gingerly upon the throne, almost as though he were afraid of being cut by it. He could see a bead of blood on his thumb from where he'd nicked his hand before he'd arrived. Ha! Are you certain you're not a Targaryen? The king asked abruptly. Some distant relation, perhaps? He shook his head. Pretty sure I'm not. And yet the dragons bow before you. Viserys heaved a sigh. The idea that anyone can control the dragons used to be just that. He waved a hand through the air. An illusion. In truth, we are more often at their whims than not. We can no more command them than we can will the sun to rise or the moon to fall. Why tell me this? Because you have done that which should not be possible. Those keen eyes fixed upon them. You can control them. You have. We've seen it. I have seen it. A flash of indignation burned through him at those words. I don't control them. I just talk to them, reason with them, and frighten them into submission when that fails. Viserys pointed out, as you did with Caraxes and as I'm told, Syrax. I have seen Caraxes devour any human who dare go near him, all save demon, yet you had him resting his head in your hand. Many in my line have been dragon riders, some even dreamers, but one who can walk through fire itself. That, he raised a finger to point at him, is rare indeed. I find myself wondering what else you might be capable of. It wasn't a threat, but a question. Curiosity. He wanted to know a few things. He shrugged one shoulder, not quite willing to tell him. I'm a man of many talents, Yano, Kurama scoffed. That's putting it mildly, but wise of you. Best to conceal our gifts for now, rather than reveal them. Not keen on revealing new hand, eh? Viserys patted the hilt of black fire, steadying himself upon its great edge as one might a cane. Only a fool reveals his hand when the game begins. I can respect that. His gaze narrowed, and in this tired old man, he glimpsed a core of steel. I trust you're not here to make war against us, then? Naruto lifted his chin. I am not. Viserys considered him for a long moment. I believe you. You do? Naruto's brow shot disappeared into his hair. Just like that? Rhaenyra's father tilted his head to regard him. Are you saying my faith is misplaced? Not at all. He dared a smile. It's nice to be trusted. Almost everyone else has been glaring at me the moment I came here. An awkward peace fell between the two of them. Viserys broke it first. Rhaenyra seems fond of you. He couldn't quite hide a smile at that. She's nice. Unfortunately, he finished with a grimace, my small council looks upon you with concern. As does my hand. Ah. And now they came to the meat of the matter. His lips pursed in a thin line. It's that Otto guy, isn't it? He had it out for me the moment he laid eye on me. His concern is ever for the safety and security of the realm. Viserys spoke slowly, choosing them with great care. That makes him seem harsher than he truly is at times. No kidding. Try as he might, Naruto just couldn't see himself getting on with the hand of the king. Alicent seemed nice enough at least. 1 point in Hightower's favor. A single bird amidst a nest of vipers does not a home make. Not now, pal. Lost in your own thoughts again? Something like that. He was hardly about to reveal Kurama's true existence to anyone just yet. They'd call him crazy and try to toss him in a cell. Try, because no one here could move him if he didn't wish to be moved. But he'd have to kill a great many people to escape from her, 2 of whom he was rather fond of. Viserys hissed suddenly, snapping him back to reality. Blast and damnation. Naruto blinked and looked back to him. The king had accidentally cut his palm on the throne when he wasn't looking, further bloodying his already injured right hand. It looked to be a deep cut at that, bleeding down onto Blackfire's naked edge. The sight filled him with a strange, nameless dread. Damn his bleeding heart. On a whim, he stepped forward, into the king's personal space. Let me see your hand. Viserys waved him off and wiped at the wound with his sleeve. It's just a flesh wound. Naruto stomped a bare foot. Hand. Now. The king complied with a sigh. I don't see what. Oh. Golden chakra flared and flowed into his palm, rendering his words a startled gasp. The wound closed with nary a sound. Almost flawlessly. Only a thin white line remained. Viserys turned his hand over with quiet awe, as though he expected to find the injury hiding somewhere upon his flesh. When he failed to find it, he looked to him. What manner of magic is this? Not magic, Naruto shook his head. Chakra. Please don't tell anyone yet. If people realized he could do this, he'd be hounded day and night. Perhaps that was cruel of him, but he'd only just come to these shores. He wanted to rest a little first, ya know? He hadn't even been here a week yet and already tangled with 2 dragons and court politics. It was exhausting. Viserys grabbed at his hand. He let him. You are a healer, then? His brow furrowed in a frown. In a sense. Why? I would ask a favor of you. Do this for me, and I will be in your debt. A queen had her duties. Lady Aemma Targaryen knew this. Of course she'd known it for years now, but knowing didn't make this battle any less unpleasant. As queen, she knew it was her duty to provide her lord husband with heirs, to keep the line of succession safe and secure. Therein lie the rub, as it were. Emma loved her Dar Viserys, loved him with all her heart and soul as she would never love another in this life, but this would be her last child. She simply could not endure anymore, could not bear another stillborn, another babe dying in its crib. How she feared for the child she carried. Pregnancy was a battle to make even the sternest of souls balk. To risk life and death merely to bring another little life into the world. There could be no more arduous battle in this world. For if war was a man's battlefield, then the birthing bed belonged to a woman. Once more, Emma knew this. Hated it, to be sure, but she understood it. Rhaenyra did not. Would that she could. Life would be so much easier for her if she simply understood the way of things. She had been defiant once, too. Wild and free-spirited, so determined to live life to the fullest with her family. Before the Great Council, before her dear husband Viserys was chosen to be king, before the unspeakable burden of being queen broke her, and stillbirth after stillbirth, after 5 failures she had come to accept that some things was simply not to be. If this birth failed, Rhaenyra would be her one and only living child forevermore. Just thinking of her made Emma smile. Even if it was a tired, fretful thing. She loved that wild, willful girl more than life itself. Rhaenyra was the delight of the 7 kingdoms. The apple of her eye. But her dear child disdained any such suitor and spent every moment she could on Dragonback or with Alicent. Her position was clear. She would not marry, never go near a boy unless she was forced to. She would never marry. Which left Emma rather flummoxed, yes, very flummoxed indeed, when her only child entered her chambers with a boy in tow. Emma pushed herself upright in bed, squinting a little at him. He looked odd. Yes, that was the word. Messy blonde hair framed a whiskered face from which bright blue eyes shone, and although his clothes were little more than black on orange rags, they still conveyed some sense of sad dignity, as did the battered metal plate he wore round his head. What was that? A headband of some sort? Was the purpose of the plate, then? To protect from arrows, perhaps? If so, why carve that strange sigil there? Curiosities upon curiosities, questions upon questions. She settled for the first. And who is this, then? This is Naruto, mother. Rhaenyra preened, and stepped aside to make way for the newcomer. Father told him of you and expressed concern for your condition. She mimed a motion at her swollen belly. He claims to be a healer. Naruto? So this was him, then. The boy Viserys spoke of these past few days. Foxfire. He could not be killed by dragonfire. Younger than she'd imagined. Hey now, I said I can heal, the young man corrected, speaking for the first time within her earshot. He had a most pleasant voice. Not that I'm a healer. There's a difference, ya know. Is there? Rhaenyra cocked her head, ever eager for debate. They're one and the same, aren't they? No, he held up a hand, we're not doing this again. We'll be here all night. How rare it was to hear her girl banter with some beside Alicent. Is he a maester, then? She propped herself up on her elbows, fanning herself with one hand. Where are his chains? He doesn't have any. Rhaenyra burst out. Isn't it strange? Oh, a healer not of the Citadel? Self-taught perhaps, or in exile. The maesters wouldn't like that, not one bit. Still, far be it from her to stir the pot. If he was offering his services, she would happily take them. Surely a second opinion couldn't hurt. Not when she felt so wretchedly weak. He knelt before her, eyes fixed on her stomach and the little life within. I ain't too experienced with this sort of thing, but, let me see. Oh, a pause followed. You're not well. A bitter laugh burst from her. Of course I'm not well, you silly boy. I'm pregnant. No, you don't understand. His blue eyes rose to meet hers, stern as the grave. I think someone's been poisoning you. What? Emma's stomach clenched as the baby kicked deep within her belly. No. It's not possible. Is it? Rhaenyra hissed out a breath. That's a damning accusation. How can you be so sure? What proof do you have? Nothing I can show you, only what I can sense. He shrugged beneath their gaze, uncowed by their ire. Pretty sure someone shouldn't have what your mother does in her. It's subtle, but whatever it is has been causing a slow decline. I know what healthy looks like, and this ain't it. Rhaenyra grabbed his shoulder. Will she be all right? She will be if I have anything to say about it. Rhaenyra scowled at him still and exasperated. He clicked his tongue at her. Have some faith, yeah? If I can save a man from the brink of death and regrow someone's eye, I can damn well help a pregnant mother. Your mother. He shook her hand off, turned back to Emma and offered an open palm. Hand please. So forward, Emma frowned even as her heart fluttered. I beg your pardon, good sir? Rhaenyra turned a pleading look upon her. Just take his hand already, mother. Reluctantly, she did as her dear daughter bade. Naruto wasted no time. He tapped his palm to hers and pulled it away just as fast. A faint tingle lingered in her fingers and she blinked down at it. A strange black moon mark gazed up at her from her palm, appearing as it hadn't before. She balked at it, turned it over, found it etched upon the back of her hand as well. What manner of black magic was this? What have you done? Just a tether to help me focus my chakra. Naruto hummed softly and laid his hands on her belly. Alright, this shouldn't take too long. Gonna start with the little one first, then you. Y'all might feel some, She felt everything. Emma's back arched beneath him. A gasp of soft surprise fleeing from her lips, fingers gripping the bed as her entire jolted in place. Distantly she heard Rhaenyra gasp. She felt a series of sharp tingles in her body, like lightning racing just under her skin. From her head to toes not an inch of her was spared. And yet there was no pain. She could feel whatever he was doing to her, but experienced only a strange numbness, smelled the faint scent of burning light, saw. Well. With neither word or warning, she saw it. A fox, great nine-tailed crimson beast looming in her mind's eye. You're in a bad way, aren't you? Don't worry, we've got you. Sleep now. With those words, Emma fell into a deep slumber. She dreamed, then. A fevered dream of ice and fire, of things she couldn't possibly explain, let alone hope to understand. Colors. So many colors. Red and black and green. A giant behemoth spread its wings to blot out the sun. Countless dragons wheeled through the sky and assailed a golden beast, like gnats swarming a giant. They died in droves as he ripped them from the clouds. A silver lance struck a green shield and both shattered into splinters. Fleabottom burned in a plume of green fire. And there, sitting on the Iron Throne, all this madness, all this death. Rhaenyra. It was a mercy when the dreams finally faded and flung her into a deep sleep. Emma wasn't sure how much time passed after that. Seconds? Minutes? Hours? It could have been the former, but seemed the latter for all she knew. She slept through it all and thought no more of her dreams. With neither word nor warning, the darkness faded and she came back to herself. Mother? Mother. Emma blinked black spots from her eyes. Rhaenyra's face was the first she saw. She helped her up and Emma tensed, prepared for pain. None came. She felt better, healthier, stronger, livelier than she had been in months. Still exceptionally gravid and heavy with child perhaps, but more aware. How do you feel? Rhaenyra fussed over her as she hadn't since she was very small, hands flitting over her belly. Better, my child. But where is, down here? Naruto sat sprawled on the floor at her bedside, his brow slick with sweat. He turned a tired smile on her. Sorry, that took a little longer than I expected. Never dealt with poison before, never mind that much of it. Maybe be more careful about what you eat and drink from now on. Yeah, Emma most certainly would. Maesters would test every meal. Or perhaps she could ask this young man to attend her? Rhaenyra seemed fond enough of him and he certainly didn't balk at poisons. Another question quavered at her lips. And the baby? She should be fine? He hummed. I think I got it all out. Time will tell. The world fell out from under Emma as her every hope absolutely shattered. She? Rhaenyra preened even as Emma's heart sank further still. I knew it. Visenya will be a fine name for her. Emma scarcely heard her. A girl. Gods be good. Viserys had been so certain it was a good boy. So had she. If it wasn't, what was to be done? The succession would still be called into question to be sure, but more than that. If her last child was to be a girl, she would be expected to have another, her decision be damned. And another, until a healthy boy finally came. Despair threatened to consume her. No more. Please no more. She couldn't bear to go through this. Not again. You mustn't tell anyone. Some of her despair must have shown through. Because Rhaenyra's companion dragged himself upright to face her. Don't make that face, Naruto soothed. You're a good mother. You'll be a good one again. That wasn't it. That wasn't it at all. Her brow furrowed as his words caught up to her a moment later. You speak as if your own no longer lives. She doesn't. Her and my dad, well. He looked away, idly scratching a whiskered cheek as Rhaenyra looked to him. They're not around. They died shortly after I was born. He missed the way Rhaenyra looked at him when he said that. Emma did not. There had been interest before, but now there was empathy. Compassion. Would she be happy with him, she wondered? The House of the Dragon must marry for advantage, that much was certain, but maybe, perhaps. She shoved her worries down and reached out to touch his head. He balked a little at first, but didn't lean away, the poor boy. You have my sympathy. Thanks, he chortled a little at her remark. But it's an old wound. I've made peace with it. Emma patted his head. He was a loyal lad. Would you stay for supper? Naruto smiled softly. I'd like that. And perhaps a proper change of clothes. She amended, flicking a look up and down the length of him. We can hardly have you walking about in those rags anymore. A hint of fire flashed through his eyes and he clutched at his clothes. What's wrong with orange and black? Besides the fact that your outfit is in tatters, his jaw opened. Closed. Opened again as he finally found the words, idly tugging at the tattered collar of his tunic. I was kinda hoping someone could fix my clothes. Unlikely. Rhaenyra tutted. There's hardly anything left to fix. Your outfit is a loss. Naruto growled a little. Still don't see what's wrong with these colors. Strange as it might sound, Naruto's defiance pleased Emma more than words. Respect or no, he wasn't going to let anyone push him around. Not her, not Rhaenyra, no one. Good. Her daughter had no need of a yes man or a lickspittle. Better to have a proper defender, a proper advisor than some mewling coward who bowed to her every whim. But he'd asked her a question earlier, hadn't he? Nothing at all. She smiled at him as they walked. Black was one of the two colors of their house, after all. As was another. Would you consider wearing red instead? Rhaenyra perked up. That sounds grand, mother. He'd look good in those colors. Naruto adopted a decidedly mulish expression, not knowing where to look between them. I'm not gonna wear some fancy tunic, perish the thought. Rhaenyra took him by the arm. I have just the thing. He blew out a sigh. I'm not going to like this, am I? Soft laughter filled the room. Days gradually bled into weeks. Soon enough, those weeks soon became a month. Against all odds, Naruto found himself starting to settle into King's Landing. But all was not well. Something must be done about the boy. The small council had once more been brought to order. All were present at the table today. Grand Maester Mellos. Master of Coin, Lyman Beesbury. Master of Laws, Lionel Strong. Master of Ships, Corlys Velaryon. Even Demon was in attendance for once as a commander of the city watch. Viserys almost wished he wasn't, if only because he knew discord would soon follow. Lord Corlys aside, it was too much to hope that Otto would forget about the boy. Likewise, he knew Demon would defend him if only to spite Hightower in return. And so discord would be had. We have humored him these last few weeks and still he shows no sign of leaving. His hand continued, turning a smoldering glare upon him in return. His presence is of no tangible use, if anything he is a threat. Viserys bit his lip to silence the outburst that threatened to explode forth. The boy did have a use. Emma's health was much improved thanks to his tireless patronage. Rhaenyra smiled more these days than she ever had. But he'd begged for his silence. And so he held his tongue. Are you mad? Lord Corlys didn't much care for such things. His concerns lay with the stepstones at the moment. Nevertheless, he raised his voice in support of Naruto. You saw what we saw that day, Otto. And yet you would be rid of him? And why should he leave? Demon scoffed, lounging in his own chair. You heard Lord Corlys, we should keep him close. Or are you so threatened by a mere boy? He has spirit perhaps. But one man, one boy, Otto amended, cannot be allowed to take such liberties. The good of the realm, piss on the realm. The prince leaned forward to sneer at him. He frightens you, doesn't he? You old, senile cunt. Peace, peace. Lord Beesbury raised his hands. He's just a boy, he commands dark magics. Leave it to Maester Mellos to speak out against him. He should have expected as much. A boy immune to dragonfire with the ear of the princess. Otto turned to face Viserys, face carved from stone. A boy who visits your own lady wife nearly every night. He is a danger, if not to your person then to your reputation. Surely you can see this, our grace, was he? From what he'd seen the boy was more a boon than a bane. He'd softened some of Demon's sharper edges. He was a gentle soul, one who wished to keep peace and help others. He'd said as much when he'd spoken to him. How then, could he willingly rid himself of such a helpful soul, Who has he harmed? Demon thumped a fist against the table. No one. You have no corpses to pile at his feet. Not this time. Your actions with the city watch have already been discussed. The prince shot back. Don't deflect, Otto. Your yellow belly is showing. Otto planted both hands on the table. As is your forked tongue, you reprobate. Oh ho. Demon leered at him. We've turned to insults now, have we? Enough. Viserys raised his voice before they could come to blows. I will hear no more of this nonsense. He has done me good service and Rhaenyra is fond of him. He rounded on Otto, turning a withering glare upon his hand. As is your own daughter, if you recall. Otto bridled at the reminder, so protective of her. Demon remained relentless. Why? The hand of the king looked away. That is not your concern, isn't it? He twisted the knife. Perhaps the Lady Hightower fancies him. He's certainly handsome enough. Otto shot to his feet. Demon matched him with a grin. Struck a nerve, have I? Enough. The both of you. Demon spun on his heel and walked away. As you wish, your grace. Viserys squinted his way. Where are you going? His brother scoffed at him without so much as looking back. I've places to be, brother, and I've heard enough of this tripe today. Demon's back hit the floor. Pain snarled up his spine, but triumph roared in his heart. Joy at the realization that he'd managed to last a full 3 seconds longer than last time. Progress was a bitter, brutal thing to win, but make no mistake, he was winning it all the same. And if his opponent was at all baffled by his determination, all the better. He kicked up and drove a knee into his opponent's chin, earning a grunt in turn. He kept fighting, lunging up to swing for his chin. Dark Sister sang in his hand and found itself parried neatly, shunted aside and thud. Clenched knuckles barreled into the back of his head. His face hit the floor this time, with an aching skull besides. He laughed, rolled over, righted himself with a grin and snatched up his sword. Again, really. Naruto lowered his fist. Knuckles scraped raw from all the punches he delivered today. I just knocked you on your ass, I said, again. Demon snatched up his sword and thrust it at him. Rhaenyra's companion didn't look half bad in Targaryen colors. Red and black suited him. His niece had chosen well, it seemed. You're some kind of persistent, you know that? He rolled his shoulders, black tunic left open at the chest beneath light armor, dark red trousers shifting just as he took up his stance. No fancy doublet for this one, no sir. Maybe don't leave so many openings next time, yeah? Demon frowned. What? You like to gloat when you get a good hit in and that's fine. That's you. The blonde waved a hand, batting his blade aside, but save it for when you've actually won. Case in point, you left your back wide open there. I was able to flank you easily, had he? It was something to consider at the very least. He was ever looking to improve as a warrior and not all lessons came to one on the battlefield. Testing himself against a superior opponent was one way to improve to be sure, yet it was also a way to take the measure of him. And thus far? You'd do whatever it takes to win. Naruto raised a waterskin to his lips and drank deeply. I can respect that. Can't say the same of you. Now it was Naruto's turn to frown. He stowed his drink and glowered at him. Huh? You're soft. Demon tapped his boot with Dark Sister, turning that frown to a grimace. You hesitate. You have bested me much sooner if you went for the hard blows. Hard blows, he says. Blue eyes rolled in mild annoyance. Those hard blows would have broken your ribs and bruised organs. Do you want to die that badly? Words, words, words. Not enough action. No, I want to improve. There's a difference. Naruto rolled his eyes. You're not going to give up on this, are you? No, he wasn't. A word of warning. Otto wants to be rid of you. He made a play to have you removed from the Red Keep today. Lucky for you, me dear brother wouldn't allow it. Seems you have him wrapped around your finger. It didn't stop him from trying anyway. A brief spark of anger flashed through those blue eyes. Demon found himself reminded of what he'd seen when the boy bested Caraxes. His temper might be slow to rouse, but once it was, there would be no hiding from his wrath. Perhaps if he could turn that fire towards Otto, they might well be rid of him, among others. Did he, now? A curious expression settled over the blonde's whiskered visage. Why? Might as well be honest with the boy. Because he's a cunt. The boy barked a laugh at his casual vulgarity. He is. Demon pushed through despite his own smile tugging at his lips. The man's a second son who stands to inherit nothing he doesn't seize for himself. Your arrival has thrown his plans into disarray. Is it any wonder he wants to be rid of you? Naruto crossed his arms. And what plans are those? If I knew that, I'd have put the old oaf's head on a spike by now. You know, he clapped his shoulder. You would have made a fine Targaryen. Naruto took a stance. So everyone seems to say. Another round, then? Demon mirrored him. Though you'd never ask. They lunged at one another. Someone knocked at her door. Rhaenyra looked up from her books. Who goes? A Kingsguard's muffled voice came through the wooden frame. The Lord Hand, my lady. Confusion reared its ugly head in her heart. Otto Hightower? What in the seven hells was he doing here at this hour? Alicent had left hours ago. Baffled by the sudden intrusion, she closed her books, rose from her bed and paced to the door. It swung open at her touch and sure enough, there he was, Lord Hightower. She took a step backward to greet him. How are you this evening? Well, princess. The Hang of the King inclined his head in return. May I enter? You may. He did as bade and closed the door behind him. She watched him like a hawk. He made no move toward her. Not that she thought he would. She admittedly knew little of Alicent's father and was thusly ambivalent toward him. They'd seldom spoke with each other and she didn't much like or dislike him one way or another. Which begged the question, to what do I owe the pleasure of tonight's visit? I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. Otto Hightower took a deep breath, clasped both hands behind his back and squared his shoulders. But I had hoped you might see reason where others would not. One hand came around, holding a small sack, cinched by a leather cord. Rhaenyra accepted it, baffled. A great many gold dragon coins gazed back her. She looked back to Otto, not quite comprehending his purpose here. What is this? Your companion. His presence here threatens to upset the delicate balance of the realm. His words were an iron dagger in her heart. A balance we have spent years trying to maintain. None must know of him. If the people learn that someone cannot be burned by dragonfire, the realm will fall into chaos. Do you understand? He gestured back to the sack of coins in her grasp. I would have you give him this, thank him for his service and send him on his way. Her eyes strayed to the coin pouch in her palm. How heavy it was. 300 gold dragons. Otto noted. Worry not, there is enough coin there for him to live the rest of his life most comfortably. Her fingers bit into the pouch. And my father ordered this? The silence was his answer. Of course it was. Had the hand of the king convinced father? No, surely not. He wouldn't. Would he? She didn't know. That uncertainty tore her thoughts to pieces. But the coin in her hands remained. A small reward, a bit of thanks, and that was it? That was all? A miracle like him came by but once in a lifetime and they would have him sent away because his presence was inconvenient. She knew her answer. Her heart hardened with it. I will not. Lord Hightower heaved a sigh. Rhaenyra, this is for the best, I will not. I will not. Rhaenyra flung the coin pouch at Otto's face, pelting him with golden dragons. The guard heard the commotion and barreled through the door. Rhaenyra saw her opening, took it. She shoved past them both and darted away in a rage, hating herself for their shouts at her back, for her anger, for the tears burning in her eyes. Damn it. Damn him. Damn it all. Could she not have bit of peace? Not one person to herself. She stalked through the halls, not caring where she went, so long as it was far from him. She knew King's Landing like the back of her hand. It was a maze of her own making, all too easy to lose them in the side passages and wide hallways. It was only when she finally paused for breath that she saw a familiar shadow beside hers. I didn't hear you. She heard the smile in his voice. I can be quiet when I want to be. You certainly can. She sniffed and rubbed at her eyes. Some noble you are. Ninja, not a noble. Naruto clicked his tongue as he seamlessly fell into step with her. There's a difference, ya know. She glanced askance at him. How so? Naruto opened his mouth to tell her and closed it thrice as quickly. Sorry. Probably shouldn't tell you everything for your own good. Lord Hightower wants me to be rid of you. The words escaped her before she could think to hold them back. He gave me 300 gold dragons. Money? She saw him tense in her peripherals. Why would I want money? Don't want to leave. Her heart skipped a single traitorous beat. I do not wish you to leave, either. Naruto nudged her side with an elbow. Then I won't. Simple, yeah? You misunderstand. She rounded on him in a swirl of silk. King's Landing is a nest of vipers. If you're going to stay here, we have to trust each other, he blinked back. I do trust you. Her face burned. Silly boy. How could he trust her when he barely knew her? You shouldn't fling around frivolous words like that. The blonde boy didn't budge. And yet I still do. Why? Well, he looked away, scratching at his cheek. I'm good at reading people these days. Call it a gift. You seem all right. Rhaenyra swallowed, took a deep breath to center herself before speaking. And what of Otto Hightower? His lips thinned into a line so firm they nearly went white. Not so much. Well, at least someone recognized the vulture for what he was. She'd not say such aloud for fear of offending Alicent, but the fact remained that the hand of the king was a grasping man. He'd shown his hand just now, overplayed the cards he held. She would not forget this. She would be wary of him going forward. He won't stop. She babbled. If he can't bribe you, then he'll seek to remove you. Let him try. His words struck her like a sledgehammer. She didn't want to see the back of him, either. She'd grown fond of his witticisms and frank way of speaking. The way he struck others speechless, and in that moment, an idea formed. A way to keep him close to her side, to bind his cause to hers. It might not work. It really shouldn't. Such power wasn't invested in her. But she couldn't think of any other way. Neil, would you kindly? A blonde brow quirked at her. Why? Her face burned darker still. Be quick about it. Naruto did as she asked, not to humor her as most men might, but because he trusted her. Trust. Such a little word, so humbling. She didn't know if she deserved such implicit loyalty. And why? All because she helped him once. Oh God, she was really doing this. If someone saw her right now, she would absolutely die from bloody embarrassment. Alicent would never let her live it down. How did one go about knighting someone, anyway? She'd seen father do so any number of times, even mother once, on a lark, yet now the words escaped her as surely as fire through her fingertips. Blast it all. She'd have to look it up. Aha. She remembered now. I need a blade. A dagger appeared in Naruto's hand, drawn from his sleeve. Will a kunai do? It would have to. She laughed and touched his right shoulder. Kneel. He did so once more with a bemused smile. In the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. Now the blade moved to his left shoulder. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. Back to the right now, and there she held it, letting the knife linger on his shoulder. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the innocent. Those were the right words, weren't they? Father could make it official later. Arise, Naruto. Her voice trembled a little as she offered him her hand once more. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. This time, he did kiss her hand. Oh gods. She hadn't expected that. Alicent would be scandalized. Should I not have done that? He looked at her. Demon said that's what knights do. Damn her uncle. She'd kick his shin the next time she saw him. Huh. Naruto stood, claiming her attention once more. Never been a knight before. You're not gonna try and make me wear heavy armor or something, are ya? Rhaenyra imagined him trundling around in a suite of plate and giggled. Just a little, despite her best efforts to resist. That depends. Will you? His smile was answer enough, but he still elaborated for her sake. Don't need it. Slows me down. Light armor's better. An agile fighter then? Rhaenyra could respect that. She'd seen him spar before. He would be perfect. A knight who could move faster than an arrow, heal others, and even endure dragon fire. Rhaenyra could think of no better protector. Not for father's Kingsguard, this one. She wanted him all to herself. No, not like that. Oh gods. She was doomed, wasn't she? Thanks for watching, guys.